Welcome back to Open House with Mark Siwiec and Corey James Moran, brought to you by Elysian Homes by Mark Siwiec and Associates. This is a Greater Rochester Real Estate Podcast, episode 163. Mark, how are you?
I'm great, bud. How are you?
It's very fall out. It's a little chilly.
It is autumnal. Yes, yeah.
I'm dealing with a major issue with my oldest son, Mason.
Oh, what's going on with May?
He's having a very tough transition right now, from going from shorts to pants. He's refusing.
Oh, is he going to be one of these guys who's like wearing shorts in the middle of January? Yeah,
probably. So we convinced him after 45 minutes of debate to finally put pants on, sweatpants, and then he just hikes them up to his knees like they're shorts.
No, how clever.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Macy, man.
So I know I'm not the only parent dealing with that. There might be some adults going through the same thing as well.
Well, let's hope not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm dealing with the hurricane. I mean, literally, I haven't, because my mom's down in Fort Myers.
That's right. So Fort Myers is kind of going to be on the outskirts of the main storm, right?
Yeah. You're right, because the winds are only going to get up to about 110
miles
per hour.
Is that bad?
Yeah. So it's insane. And so I know that my sister-in-law doesn't, but you've got several in-laws, and your family is very, very close. I have the best sister-in-law. She lives on the east coast of Florida, divorced from my brother. She picks up the phone. She's very close with my mom. Get over here, get in the car, get over here 2 days ago. And then she's realizing that there might be hurricanes on the East Coast.
Yep.
And my sister-in-law is supposed to be flying up to South Carolina for a wedding. She buys my mother a plane ticket, and she flies my mom. She's just unbelievable. So my mom is very, very, very safely.
Thank goodness.
Because
that's scary stuff. I mean,
terrifying.
It didn't end up hitting us, but when I was living in Virginia Beach, I can't remember which storm it was. It might have been Irene, actually. Was at first projected to hit Virginia Beach.
Wow.
And I couldn't leave because part of the job, I was working for the radio station at the time, part of the job was having to report on everything that was happening.
Wow.
So we literally hunkered down it was a big brick building. We hunkered down in the radio station studios for a couple of days.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, definitely serious stuff.
Well, I mean, the good news is my mom is safe, and she's going to remain safe, which is awesome.
Well, good for her getting out. There's a lot of people who are just, we're going to figure it out.
Ridiculous, stupid, yeah. The bad news, I mean, when this actually runs next week, we will have a really good sense as to what kind of damage was done to my mom's house. I mean, a couple of years ago, thankfully, she just had a few tiles ripped from her from her roof. Yeah. What was great is I was actually getting ready to drop $10,000 on a new roof for her. And it's like literally 4 tiles blew off.
Yeah.
And her insurance company came in, and they're like, you got to get a new roof, lady.
Okay.
And so the insurance company paid for it. You're like, oh, okay, all right, if you say so.
Nice, there you go. Actually, I watched an AI video, and AI is going to be one of the things we talk about in the podcast.
Yeah.
It was an AI-generated video showing you what happens to a house through a Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5.
I saw a similar video, which is, here's 3 feet of water, here's 6 feet, here's 9 feet of water. It's like,
scary stuff. Scary stuff for sure.
Yeah. So.
All right, coming up on the podcast, like I mentioned, we'll chat about AI, one of Mark's favorite topics.
Yes, it really is. Go for
it.
It
is fascinating. The latest with mortgage interest rates, less fascinating, less fun. And is the Rochester real estate market finally experiencing a cool down?
Yeah.
We'll chat about that. Let's get into the market update first. So again, comparing these numbers, we recorded on a Friday last week, so we're back on a Wednesday on our normal time right now. 529 single-family active listings in Rochester. That is just slightly down from 533.
Okay.
So we expect that number again to tick up. Should be slightly above that. Yeah. I'm attributing that to there's some houses that are sitting, and then we'll.
That's exactly my read. I don't think there are a lot of new properties coming on the market for sale.
And we'll dive into that in a second. 6 county region, really interesting. 910 last week. Again, on a Friday where the number should be lower.
Yep.
Already at 918.
Really?
For this week. So that's already jumped up, and that number again should increase.
Yeah, due to the fact that people just aren't buying right now.
Under contract and pending properties, Monroe County was at 1102 last week. That number's dropped to 1085.
Okay.
And then for the 6 county region, it was 1705. That has dropped to 1687.
Okay.
So those numbers are going down. Again, looking into those numbers, I think you can also attribute that to stuff sitting because obviously their numbers are going down, so less things are selling, and more things are closing.
Yeah.
Interest rates. Should we just skip this part?
Oh man, I mean, go for it.
I mean, we're at now what, a 2-month high?
Yeah. Well, what are the interest rates right now?
We're at 6.62%
Okay,
for the
great.
30 year.
So they didn't move up from yesterday. We don't have a new reading today.
Right, I think it was flat so far.
Okay.
We'll see in the afternoon. So,
Okay.
but that 6.62 number was a jump from 6.53 that we saw last Friday when the new jobs report came out and ruined everything. The 15 years now well over 6.15%.
Yeah, and just last week it was what 5.45 or something.
5.88 was when we last recorded.
Yes, but the week before that, and I think it was like below 5.5, wasn't it, a few weeks ago? Yeah.
Yeah, so not great. It's the highest. Fannie Mae's sentiment survey reveals that the highest percentage of respondents since 2021 expected rates to fall, but the market has obviously not followed that trajectory, at least short term.
It is so interesting because I guess it demonstrates once again the fact that there is this remarkable symmetry that exists between the yield on the 10-year Treasury and mortgage rates, and so the 10-year Treasury has just been jumping ever since that jobs report. So yeah, been ugly.
Tomorrow's going to be a big day because it could get uglier, or maybe some of the bleeding can stop. The CPI numbers come out. So that report is going to have a pretty big effect, I think, on what happens next.
Yeah, inflation data is it can certainly hurt rates if we find that there's a bounce in the inflation data. It's almost an asymmetric risk, meaning that if there's a lot more potential for rates going up than there is down. So if inflation shows to be taming again, great. It'll be well received, and interest rates might tick. Mortgage rates might tick down a little bit. But I think there's a lot more risk going up. That if it shows that inflation has started to tick up a little bit, you're going to see the 30-year mortgage just jump significantly. So a lot more upside risk than there is down. And again, it's asymmetric. So,
and then what happens with that? I mean, the Fed's going to be in a bit of a bind come November and December, because what do? I mean, they did the 50 basis point cut in September. We have no idea what that has done yet.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. So if indeed we find that interest rates, if we find that the rate of inflation has started to go up again, you're going to see the Fed do nothing at their next meeting. They will just keep rates where they are. But in light of the report that came out this past week, the employment numbers, I mean, they may be compelled. I mean, those were really, really significant numbers. So the Fed may very well at their next meeting in the FOMC, which is about a month from now.
Sure.
It's actually going to be right after the election. They may just sit tight and wait and watch to see what's going on. There's a lot of unknowns going on right now.
I posed the question at the beginning of the podcast: is the Rochester market specifically finally experiencing a cool down? Because we've seen it throughout different parts of the country, but this feels like maybe the first time where it feels like it's hitting Rochester a little bit, and for different reasons. The cool down in a lot of the areas around the country are due to a giant increase in listings.
Right.
Here, it just seems like, I don't know. Buyers are just kind of hanging out. I mean, I'm sure these mortgage numbers, over the past week or so are attributing to that. But it started before even, right?
I was going to say, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's very, very hard to pinpoint or understand what it is that's playing out. I mean, a few different things. One, our team numbers. I always like to say that when we're doing well, we love to tell people that we're doing well. If we're not doing so well, you know what? We're going to be honest. We're going to tell you that also.
Sure.
So we, right after Labor Day, we entered the fall market thinking that we were going to sell the 92 million in 2024 that we sold in 2023. It looks as if, as a result of things that are going on and the sales that we've experienced in September and our projections for the remainder of October, it looks as if we may be a full $3 to $5 million shy of that. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty remarkable turnaround. We're also not seeing as many of our properties. I mean, some of our clients are actually taking the properties off of the market, and they're saying that they're going to go ahead and they're going to relist after the first of the year. The one thing that I find really, really fascinating, and this has to do with listings, we'll get to buyers in a moment. I find it fascinating the number of clients who started calling me in September, and it continues in the month of October. These are former clients who are reaching out saying, hey, I want to go ahead and I want to sell. I'm like, terrific. When do you want me to? Well, you don't need to come over right away. I want to do that sometime in 2025. I would imagine that in a few weeks' time, when we start to look at these numbers and the number of people who are going to be listing with us in 2025, historically, this will be at an all-time high. But they are behaving in part, I believe, because the buyers are just sitting on their hands. Mm-hmm. And what are they waiting for? I mean, interest rates to go down? Yes, that certainly is a large part of it. I think there's a lot of, at least locally, there's a lot of uncertainty having to do with the presidential election.
Yeah, that's huge. That's it.
Yeah, which is what, 27 days away.
And again, I think also fatigue just from the whole year.
And fatigue.
I mean,
yeah, that's the same three things.
Always in play. I mean, it is fascinating. I had a property that I listed last week that we actually got some pretty good traction on. We had with the open, with the number of private showings, had about 20 groups through.
Yeah.
And traditionally, if you have 20 groups through a property, your hit rate is going to be maybe 4 to 5 offers, maybe a little more, maybe a little bit less.
Yep.
Ended up getting 1 offer.
And this is a price point, I believe, that traditionally generates a lot of excitement and enthusiasm and a lot of competitive.
Yeah, this was sub 200. I priced it at $199.9.
Yeah.
Usually that goes absolutely bananas, and you get 15 offers, and it goes crazy. Yeah. But that did not transpire.
Conversely, I had 2 properties this week. One had 29 showings, private showings before the open house. We had 30 people at the open house.
Oh, yeah.
And we had 9 offers as a result of that. And there was another property that we put on the market for sale, and that property ended up getting 6 offers. So it's interesting. It's
so hit or miss.
Very, 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 intermittent, very, very hit or miss.
One of the things that's kind of interesting, too, is if you're going through, if you're a buyer right now, and you're going to open houses, you might see maybe some increased activity at open houses. And I think that can be attributed to the rules that went into place back in mid-August, where you need to sign these buyer agency agreements. Yeah. I mean, think about the people that would normally just pop onto Zillow because they just feel like seeing this property and maybe they're not going to buy it. Maybe they are, whatever, but they're not super committed. Those folks aren't signing legal documents with an agent that Zillow sets them up with, and they have no idea who they are, or have ever had any interaction with. Those folks are, in my opinion, are more likely to now go through opens.
I completely agree with that. That's a really fascinating point, one that I hadn't actually thought about. So yeah, we probably will see greater activity at open houses, and that's actually great for a few different reasons. I guess I'm being selfish when I say that we are so grateful and so fortunate for our colleagues and those agents who help us to host, because a given Sunday we will have 4, 5, 6 open houses.
Right. Yep.
We don't have enough firepower, enough manpower in the team to actually host all those. So we turn to colleagues. It would be nice to see them rewarded for the efforts that they're putting in as a result of sitting there for a couple of hours. Hopefully they'll be able to start picking up more buyers.
For sure. From the buyer side of it, for those that are still engaged, and actually our listener question for this week, which we'll get to here in a little bit, somewhat ties into this, so we'll try not to step on that. But opportunity is here if you are sticking it out as a buyer.
Yes.
Big time.
Well, and I mean, I do have my detractors, and just before recording,
you want to publicly? I don't know. Let's address them. Well, he's a good friend of yours, right? Has he been over to the house? Does he know Lily's favorite dog biscuits?
So just a real quick segue. Alex, who's our engineer for these episodes, I walked in and he says, "So who's this guy who's your really good friend who's like talking to you about was it RBJ? Was it RBJ? The RBJ article last week, or
yeah.
So it was the Rochester Business Journal article.
So your blog that was
So this guy says that when I stated in the Rochester Business Journal that this is a great time for buyers to purchase. He took me to task, and he did so. It
was respectful.
He did so very kindly and very respectfully. I will give this guy credit, though. He's been reaching out to me for the past 4 or 6 weeks, trying to engage me, and it's been just too busy, just way too busy for me to engage with him.
Sure.
I ultimately will engage with him, but he starts out by saying, that his good friend Mark Siwiec, yada yada yada, and then he basically shit posted, or shit talked to me for a couple of minutes, but he did so respectfully. So
But again, it's a good time to buy right now.
Despite what it is that he says, I do think it is a good time to buy. And yes, interest rates have gone up. But I mean, this goes back to the phrase that people were marry the house and
Date the rate.
Yeah, date the rate. Yes. So marry the house, date the rate. So buy the house right now, and then after February, March, when it is that interest rates, if mortgage rates have come down, let's just go ahead and you can refinance. So it is a great opportunity.
It is. Again, for a lot of buyers out there, think about not only price, which again, that is what our listener question is more tied to, but just the terms you can have. If you need to maybe be a little more flexible with your closing, there's a little more give and take with the seller. Getting an inspection in, whoa, what would that feel like to get a full report?
Yeah. There's the equivalent here, which is when investing in the stock market, there are a lot of contrarian investors. So when it is that a lot of people are pouring money into the stock market, a contrarian investor will actually be pulling money out, and vice versa. When it is that when people are just fleeing the market, these are the guys who are sensing opportunity and they go in and they buy. And I think contrarian investors would do well in this local real estate market until between now and the end of the year.
For sure. One of the things we've been looking and tracking, agents in the market.
Yeah.
Those that are leaving. Obviously, it's been a very difficult year. It's been the hardest year in the past 4 or 5 to remember, for sure.
Yeah. Well, actually, just to add on to that, it's one of the few years, I've been doing this for 34 years. This is one of the few years in which our sales are actually going to go down.
Right.
One of the only times. I mean, and then the only other times were probably during the Great Recession. And then the year that we asked Bob Duffy to run for mayor, I was focused and spent so much time working on that campaign. My sales actually went down that year.
Whoops.
Yeah,
it worked out okay. He won.
He won. Like it was definitely worth the sacrifice. Yeah.
But I've got some data.
Okay.
Early numbers here, obviously, but the Bureau of Labor and Statistics reveal that nearly a 3% dip in people working in real estate in 2024.
Working in real estate as paid.
So they don't specify necessarily what that is, but obviously it's going to be a mixture of agents, probably paid staff in there as well. So a 3% drop there. Maybe this will help a little bit more. The National Association of Realtors predicts its membership could drop by 10%.
Okay.
Now that also might be some people just saying, screw them, they don't do anything for us. Why am I paying you?
Well, that's very true. I'm shocked that the numbers aren't higher. Again, there's no need for us to have in excess of 3,000 agents trying to sell real estate in the 6-county region. It makes no sense.
I do think the numbers will go higher because think about it, this year again has been hard, but people have been slogging through, trying to get through it. The new rules changes that are pushing some people out, or at least the idea of pushing them out, didn't go into effect until mid-August. So I think we're not really going to have a really good feel on how many people are leaving until at some point next year.
Right, I agree with that. I completely agree. I mean, you've got several different things. You've got the difficulty of this market. You've got the DOJ, the National Association, the DOJ NAR settlement that took place in August, as you suggested, and then you've also got the FCC ruling that impacts a lot of agents' ability to buy leads through Zillow, et cetera. So I think you've got 3 forces coming together that will really start to show some attrition in those numbers.
For those agents that do stay, one of the things they're going to want to utilize even more so moving forward.
Is this? Yeah.
We're here.
Oh, okay.
AI.
Okay. All right.
So Ryan Serhant, who you're a big fan of.
Big fan, yeah.
What's the show he's on? Owning Manhattan?
Owning Manhattan, yeah.
He's a huge fan of using AI.
Oh, I actually saw this article. This was in Inman, yeah.
So he actually...
Please tell me if you culled something from the article that I didn't, because I read it, I was like, okay, this is basically Ryan Serhant saying that he's got a new platform and it's going to do all sorts of things, but he wasn't specific. So,
well, he does have an AI-driven service that he uses to handle daily tasks like customer relationship management, which usually covers about 60% of an agent's time, just kind of the data and tracking. And his argument is that you can use these sorts of AI programs to take that off your plate, and then that frees you up to do the more personalized services.
I completely agree with that, but the lack of specificity.
Sure. Of what is it exactly?
Yeah, it's also going to, I don't know, caused me to lose another 20 pounds, and it's going to do all my grocery shopping for me, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, all that is great, but but his lack of ability to drill down. But this is something we talked about in yesterday's meeting, which is that in the final quarter of the year, I always try to spend time figuring out what was working in our company and what wasn't. Get rid of the old stuff, and then just innovate and start to. And I've got probably 6, 8, 10 processes that I want to start to implement, so that our transaction coordinator, our listing coordinator, and then Sandra's job, who does intake for us and answers the phones. I just want there to be greater communication between each of their processes. So I'm hoping that actually takes place, so that, for instance, when there is a sale that takes place, a lot of the data is migrating throughout the software that handles that. But Excel, which is where we track dollar volume of sales, and then I've got a cash flow spreadsheet. There should be, through an API, just the ability to take that sale and the commission, so that we know exactly what our cash flow looks like, because there's something that's been added in real time,
right?
Rather than somebody having to waste the time to actually open up another program and then just type in the data.
I mean, I think that's the most fun part about a lot of these AI tools, is figuring out, okay, how do I take this and how do I use it towards my business? Because it really is one of these times in history where it's the Wild West. I mean, anything goes, anything you can think of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this goes back to, I mean, I was talking yesterday about ChatGPT. So, if somebody's still 2 years into the inception of ChatGPT, if people still aren't using it, open it up, fire it up. I mean, you've got to do so, because you are being left behind. I mean, Google as a search engine is going to have fewer than 50% of the market share for online searches predicted in the year 2025. Wow. Below 50%, which is really remarkable. And that's because increasingly people are just setting aside Google to do their searches. I hardly ever search for anything on Google any longer. I just go right to ChatGPT. I was telling the team yesterday, though, that I spent 3 consecutive weekends driving back from our place on Keuka, where I fired up ChatGPT, and there is a means by which you can actually speak to ChatGPT and engage in conversation. And I said to ChatGPT, okay, by the way, and I said, so it's becoming so personal that I actually finally said, I said, what do I call you? and this guy says, well, you can either call me Chad or you can call me G. So I now call this AI G. I'm like, hey G, okay, so listen, I want to pick up where it is that we left off last week. And the question that I've been asking him for 3 consecutive weekends is, I want you to know everything that you possibly need to know about Elysian Homes, so that I can in the future turn to you to ask questions about growing our business strategically and otherwise. And I said, so what are the questions that you feel that you need to ask me, and what information do you want to know? He's like, no problem, Mark. Let's start with your staff, and tell me a little bit about your staff and what are their roles, and tell me about your ideal demographic, and what was your sales volume last year? What are your goals this year? Like, it probably took 4 to 6 hours for me to just go through all this with this ChatGPT. And now it has this incredible database of who we are. Everybody's names, it'll refer to, I'll say, hey, I was having a conversation with my COO, and he's like, how is Ed today? And I'm like,
it's crazy.
Jesus.
It's a little it's very cool. It's a little terrifying.
It is, but we're utilizing this, and I think it's just going to continue to give us an edge over the competition. Sorry, I knew you're just sitting there and you're just like groaning to yourself.
No,
like, I should not have mentioned AI to Mark.
I put it in the sheet, okay?
Okay, all right, there we go.
So I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, the latest AI tool that you introduced us to is the Google Notebook LM. This, if you have not heard about this yet, this will blow your mind.
Yes. I've talked for a while.
So basically, the gist of this AI tool is that if you want to learn about a certain subject, or just interested in a certain moment in history, really anything you can think of, anything you want to learn about, you go into it, you give it some prompts of what you want it to talk about, and it will create in a couple of minutes.
Yes,
depending on how much information you give from the prompt, a 5 to 45 minute podcast that is created, where it's like us. We're going back and forth. There's personal stories that are interjected.
There's pauses,
there's vocal pauses,
there's colloquialisms, there's arguments.
You would never know it was AI unless they told you, which literally is one of the things floating around on YouTube right now, a video of them being informed they're AI, and they kind of freak out a little bit.
Yeah. I took, and I was really interested to hear how this is going to play out. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, do me a favor, tell me everything you know about my brokerage. And then I got a written transcript of that. I copied and I pasted it, and I then sent it over to Google Notebook LM. And I said, please just create a podcast. And it created the most interesting and insightful podcast about our business and where it is that we're headed. And without prompting, and it said, what's going to be really interesting for Mark is, how is he going to accomplish this next year? He's going to transition from being 50% sales and 50% CEO to somebody who's spending 80% of his time as CEO. And so the concerns that I think we would both, and this is again the AI generated podcaster saying to her co-host, I think we would both say that the concerns that we would have for Mark is, how is he going to juggle it all, and is he going to be able to utilize and leverage the talent around him to accomplish all that he needs to? It was just fascinating. So I'm actually posting this to LinkedIn sometime in the next 40. Well, by the time this runs, this will be on LinkedIn. Go to my LinkedIn and listen to just a snippet if you want. But I think you'll find if somebody starts to listen to a minute or two of this podcast about our brokerage, I think that people will be hooked because it's so entertaining, and these AI generated podcasters are so compelling that you'll probably want to listen to the entire 10 minutes.
It's mind-blowing. With that said, this is our final podcast for being taken over by AI. No, we're gonna hang in there. We're gonna hang in there for now, anyways.
Yeah, for now. Yeah.
All right. Listener question. You ready?
Yeah, great.
This ties a little bit into one of the conversations about, is the market cooling? Jenna from Pittsburgh wants to know, I've been seeing a lot of articles about the housing market cooling. Does that mean sellers are more willing to negotiate prices now? Like, my answer, the short answer to that is maybe.
Maybe. I think that's a really good, because we said just a few minutes ago that there seems to be no rhyme or reason as to what is and is not selling. There seems to be no rhyme or reason about the number of people who are walking through listings, the number of people who are walking through open houses, the number of offers that we're securing, the dollar volume above or the price above which people are coming in over asking. So it's very hard, but I would say that there is certainly more opportunity today than there has been at any point in time in the past 4.5 years.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, that goes without question. I think if we really want to drill down, though, to answer this question, are sellers more willing to negotiate prices? You have to ask yourself one question: how motivated is that seller?
Yes.
If they need to move, if they're leaving the area, they need the money.
Right.
They're going through a divorce. They're going into an assisted living situation.
There's death. There's illness. There's all that. Yeah.
Then they're going to be more likely to take what they're going to realize is less than they expect.
Yeah.
Versus someone who has the privilege, and ultimately, when it comes down to it, here's the rub for buyers. Even when all of the leverage appears to be on your side, a seller always has the ultimate leverage of, if I don't have to sell this house, you can't make me sell it to you for what you want.
Right. And that is something that has been playing out over the course of the past 10 days or so in terms of some of these listings. I referenced this earlier. Our clients who are just saying, you know what, let's just pull it off the market. The market seems to be dead right now. Let's relist it after the first of the year. So that is there. That is if they have that privilege. But I think there's another part of this, which is I think that both you and I would agree that properties are being listed for sale, but they're no longer selling necessarily $125,000 over asking.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Or $85,000. So that's another advantage that a buyer has in this market, is that they're going to be able to buy a house perhaps $35,000 over asking. And again, that is still so, you're not overpaying. I mean, this is a property that will continue to increase in value over the next few years because there just isn't enough inventory to satisfy the needs of the buyers who are out there. So, yeah.
There you go. All right, Jenna. Again, if you ever have any questions about real estate, you can always reach out through our social media. You can comment on the YouTube video, our emails, whatever. Celebrity Real Estate, you ready?
Yeah. Oh, Celebrity Real Estate. Hold on. Let me fire up the iPad.
You're amped up, I can tell.
Oh boy, here we go.
The first one, I feel like we might have talked about this property at some point within the last year or so, but it's a home recently owned by actor and director Clint Eastwood that sold for $18.55 million. This is the Carmel by the Sea.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So the seller, Frederick Osuch, originally purchased the property from Eastwood back in '96 for about $2.25 million.
Oh.
This home, built in 1924, is a Spanish Revival style.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty stunning.
This one speaks to me.
Well, this one he invested about $2.5 million into renovations over the course of 2 years as well. So he's upgraded the 4-bedroom house with custom mahogany doors,
this is beautiful.
window trim. I mean,
my God.
everything.
Look at this patio. I mean, the stonework. I mean, and that's artistry. This is not stone that is lined symmetrically, piece after piece after piece after piece. This is an artist who came in and just took oddly shaped pieces of stone and then cobbled them together in some really beautiful. And it mirrors actually the stone of the in the same patterns or randomness, I should say, of the stone on the house. I mean, the adobe roof. I mean, it's just beautiful. I mean,
You're a big Spanish Revival fan?
I am now. Let me tell you. I mean, that is the fire pit. That's really beautiful. But then also the setting. I mean, like God.
Yeah.
It's right there on the ocean. I mean, that's a beautiful home. Okay.
And for those who are just listening to the podcast, as we always like to point out, Alex is going to be interjecting some of the photos that you can see these properties.
Thank you, Alex. Yay.
The next one, not a lot of photos to interject here, Alex. I'm going to save you some work. But I wanted to bring up this property because David and Victoria Beckham have set their sights on an $80 million sophisticated Miami Beach mega mansion.
Yeah, look at how happy she is about
Anything?
her
Ever?
ability to buy an $80 million. I mean, Victoria. I mean,
Come on, Posh.
oh
What happened?
man, just this woman is incapable of breaking a smile. I mean, I take that back because when there was a great Beckham documentary that I watched, I don't know, probably about 6 months ago. It was fascinating, and it talked about his career from beginning to end, and I loved it. And she actually played obviously a prominent role in the documentary.
Sure.
And she actually came across as something other than
A human?
a bitch. Yeah, she came.
Okay,
yeah,
wow.
No, she came across something other than a bitch. She came across as actually having some warmth about her. I mean,
Nice.
Yeah, but she definitely suffers from RBF. No two ways about it.
This property, it's going to span over 14,000 square feet, has 124 feet of private water space,
Wow.
waterfront including a dock, 9 bedrooms, 9.5 bathrooms. Yeah, we'll get our hands on pictures of this at some point, I'm sure, but pretty phenomenal.
What is this? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So this is another property they own in Miami, a $20 million penthouse. Oh, in the Zaha Hadid Design 1000 Museum.
Yeah, the pool in the penthouse is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah. So Zaha Hadid, a really great Pritzker Prize-winning architect. I think that she was Israeli. She died a few years back, but her firm continues. Her eponymously named firm continues without her. But there is an amorphic sort of sensibility about her design, which, God, it goes one of two ways. 85% of the time, it's just terrible. It's just schlock.
Okay.
But in the hands of a master like Zaha Hadid, it's actually really, really, really spectacular and really beautiful. So yeah, I mean, definitely you want to check out this. It looks like a lap pool. So Alex will go ahead and post that. But that's a beautiful. I actually like that better than I like the $80 million sophisticated.
There we go. Okay.
Miami Beach mansion. Why did they put the word sophisticated in quotes?
Good question.
Sort of interesting.
Last one.
Last one.
Nick Cage.
Okay.
He has added a $10.5 million Malibu mansion to his property portfolio. This one, a 4,000 square foot home located in the exclusive neighborhood with neighbors like Beyonce and Jay-Z. Was first listed
in the concrete bunker that they purchased.
The concrete bunker, was first listed at $11.25 million, but had previously been offered as high as nearly $18 million. So did have to price cut on this one, but not bad.
All right, what are your thoughts here?
This it's a '94 build, so it's not not the most
no.
modern of modern, is
no,
it?
It was
Does it scream
94.
'90s? Does it scream '90s to you?
It says I was built in 1994, and I have not. Nobody has touched me since. Nobody has done a I mean, like even the terrible furniture and the carpets. I mean, like it's all just. It's very meh. It's very yeah, and it's also. I mean, listen. I like Nick Cage, but like he's not somebody that I would turn to for like I don't know. Aesthetic
style advice.
Yeah.
No, he's someone you turn to for if you need him to be in a movie. He will say yes because he says yes to everything.
Oh man, like oh God, did you? Oh, this bathroom is just terrible.
I wanted to role reverse this week on the podcast because so often I set you up with some bad ones to begin with, and then I bring in the good stuff at the end. I just did the role reversal this week.
I mean, seriously, look at. Okay, the master bath. It looks as if these cabinets were purchased from Chase Pitkin back in like the mid '80s. With
90s, Mark, 94 build.
Mid-90s, that's right, mid '90s. Either way, it's got like the really cheap and cheesy gas fireplace, which was at one point in time a big deal. No longer. Nick, come on, bud, do better.
Don't want to go to Nick's house? Okay.
No.
Fair enough.
I would definitely go. I would endure Victoria Beckham's RBF for a little bit of for a moment in the Zaha Hadid designed lap pool.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. Anything on your end?
Should we pray for a positive CPI report? I mean, by the time this is put out,
define positive.
Yeah. Saying the same? Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, we got to
even going down. I mean, like I would love another 0.2 point dip in inflation.
Is that going to set? Because again, it feels like it can't be too good or too bad one way or the other. Is that going to set off the stock market?
That's why I asked the question.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. But at this point in time, doesn't the stock market need to cool down a little bit? I mean, every day you pick up the Wall Street Journal, like, the Dow came up another high for the year. So,
right.
The 22nd high for the year, the 24th high for the year. Like, it really is remarkable. So,
well, we will see. That'll be obviously a big point of discussion on the podcast next week.
And let's hope and pray for actually the following. Let's hope and pray that the citizens of the state of Florida actually survived like what looks like a monster storm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.